Hello, everyone, and welcome to the second episode of the We're Young But Just Us podcast on the Sports Opinion Podcast network of podcasts. Today's episode is fan-frickin-tastic. I was able to get acclaimed DC and Marvel comic writer and the co-creator of Deadpool, Fabian Nicieza, who more importantly is a New Jersey resident because NJ frickin' rules. We talk about some amazing topics. He just signed the book deal with Putnam Publishing, and we talk about his 2021 book, Suburban Dicks. He goes into it and why you should definitely buy it. We talk about Jonathan Hickman's X-Men run and what he thinks of it. We talk about Tim Drake and his run at DC from 2009 and 2011 on the Robin books. And, of course, we dive into his alma mater in Rutgers and their amazing basketball team, who is ranked this week, number 24 in the AP polls. And we go into that and the excitement surrounding the season and his reaction to it. So please enjoy the episode, fellas. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It is the episode 2 of the We're Young But Just Us podcast on the Sports Opinion Podcast Network of podcasts. So it's confusing to say. And I am very happy and excited to announce, and I'm not going to butcher this, our guest on tonight's show, Fabian Nicieza. Did I get it?
You came pretty close. Yeah, you screwed up the first name.
I told you I was worried about
really close with the second name, which is rare. Usually it's the other way around. It is Fabian Nicieza, but since you are American, you're allowed to pronounce it Fabian Nicieza, whichever. It makes Americans happy to not know how to pronounce foreign names, so it's okay.
Oh, good. Yeah, well, I always have the fight with people since I go to school in Louisville about how they call it Versailles out here, their town. I'm like, no, it's Versailles. And it makes me.
Yes, Versailles. That's a new one. I haven't heard that one before. Versailles.
Yes, it's a town in Kentucky spelt the same as Versailles, and it's called Versailles.
Wow, that's a good one. Okay.
I mean, yeah. And if you don't know Mr. Nicieza, I'm just going to run over a quick laundry list, and it's a very long one. Just in case you haven't heard of him, he's written New Mutants, X-Force.
This is Kyle's polite way of saying I'm old. That's what he's
doing. New Mutants, X-Force, New Warriors, Cyforce, Alpha Flight, The Avengers, Cable, which you co-created, right?
I did not co-create.
Did not co-create. My bad.
No, that was Rob with Louise Simons.
All right. You did co-create Deadpool.
Yep.
He's written Justice League, Thunderbolts, of course, X-Men, Magneto, Gambit, Cable, and Deadpool, the series. He's written action comics with Kurt Busiek, Nightwing, Robin, Azrael, Red Robin, Legion Lost, Trinity, and I believe I'm missing much, or that seems about right?
Probably some of the Acclaim stuff, and you're missing my most recent stuff, which is Outrage on Webtoon, which is a digital platform.
I tried to find all I could. I was looking at different places.
Well, it's hard to find digital comics when you're looking at mainstream comic sites because they just have a hard-on only for the direct market. Outrage has been read by more people than any Marvel or DC comic I've written in 20 years, so... It is a very viable platform for storytelling, and we're working on our second season right now. Season 1 is 26 chapters, and it's ready to read if you download the app for free and subscribe for free and read for free.
Awesome. But I know what you're most excited about is news that's come out recently, is that you're venturing into books. You signed a 2-book deal, I believe, with Putnam Publishers.
That was pretty fun. Just signed the terms of agreement in November, and they made the announcement to Publishers Weekly about a week ago. I signed a 2-book deal. My first book, which is the manuscript they were bidding on and purchased, is called Suburban Dicks. It is a sarcastic suburban mystery story. My hope is that it's an ongoing story world where the main characters appear in every book, but we float around and focus on different characters within the story world. And the story world, in essence, is really a real suburban New Jersey town, but fictionalized. So it's set in West Windsor, New Jersey, which is right near Princeton. It's an area of the state that I've lived in since 1988 because my wife used to work for the state government. and I just needed a way to get into New York City. So she said, well, there's a train station down here. And I said, okay, fine. And so we ended up being in this area. And it's a place I know very, very well because I've lived it pretty much since I was about 7 years old, between living in central New Jersey and now living in what is considered north-south New Jersey. I ventured over the demarcation point where there's so many Philadelphia fans, and it took some adjusting. It took some getting used to leaving Sayreville and Old Bridge, which was all New York Giants or New York Jets or whatever, to venturing down toward the Lawrenceville and Princeton area, where you get a whole bunch of Flyers and Phillies and Eagles stuff. So I like to call it north-south Jersey.
Hold on, before we move on, I have to say this just out of personal pride. The co-creator of Deadpool acknowledges there is a Central Jersey.
Yes,
I'm just letting
there is a Central Jersey. Yeah, I don't see how I don't know how you couldn't think there is. I mean, there's a definitive North Jersey and there's a definitive South Jersey, so there has to be a Central Jersey. To me, it's the majority of like the Middlesex County area and heading west. Out towards New Brunswick and towards Piscataway and all that. That's all the Edison, Woodbridge. That's all central New Jersey,
100%. But so using the transitive property, Deadpool says Central Jersey exists.
Yes, and if we can't trust and believe Deadpool, who can we trust?
All right, just letting it state for the record. Before we get back into the book itself, which I'm very excited about. What made you say like the 2020s are now the time for you to write novels and move from?
Technically I didn't, and I've had a lot of people ask me that question already in just a couple of weeks after the announcement was made, because I'm so personified with comic books. But the truth of the matter is twofold. One truth is that I actually had the idea for this book in 1993. I had the characters, I had the whole story broken down. I the beginning, the middle, the end. I knew what the mystery was. Everything basically I had since 1993. I tried to write it a couple times, and I wasn't happy with the work because I've always been really very critical of my prose work in a way that I'm not as insecure when it comes to comic books or video game script writing or animation script writing or even spec television or movie screenplay writing that I've done. I'm always much more comfortable and confident with that work. But with prose, I was always a very harsh judge of myself, and I never felt that I was manifesting the right voice. So I tried to start it a couple times, and I just set it aside, and I let paying work and the realities of deadlines and schedules to take precedent over focusing on it. And the second thing is that I've been predominantly not a comic book.
Sorry, losing you.
Comic book writing has only been. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're good now. You were losing you for a sec, so
okay.
You just repeat like a little bit like the last 5 seconds. I would think.
Okay. Since 2004, the predominant way I've earned a living has not been comic book writing. That's only been a percentage of the whole. A lot of what I've done is intellectual property management. And toy companies and video game companies, and it has nothing to do with comics. It's slightly more academic research and writing. And I was a chief creative officer for a virtual world startup, which was a kids sports themed virtual world. I did that for like 5 years, 3 years on staff in an office, and I ran basically the entire creative output and worked in conjunction with the game developer to input creative content into the game structures. The virtual world died before we ever really got a chance to launch for a wide variety of reasons, but that was 3 to 5 years from like 2008 to 2013. So I've done a whole bunch of other stuff that has nothing to do with comic books. So when they announced the book, I had a lot of people saying, "What made you do this now?" And I'm thinking to myself, I've been doing all kinds of stuff forever. It's just not the kind of stuff that people read about in the comic book, press. The other aspect of it is I started this in 2017. So I started writing this in the fall of 2017. That's when I originally opened up the file in the laptop, because I just recently saw that. Said, file opened October 8th, 2017 or something. And I just plugged away a little at a time. It was never the predominance of what I was doing last year, but I just kept plugging along. And what happened is that I gave the first 3 chapters as samples to a couple people to read, and they all responded pretty positively to it, and that felt very encouraging. And the more I wrote, the more comfortable I got with the format and my voice. And I finished the first draft probably around February of 20. When did I finish the first? No, I'm sorry. I finished the first draft around January of 2019. So it took me a little over a year to write a first draft, and then I had a whole bunch of people read it. I hired a professional editor to give me advice on cutting it, because I knew I had to cut a lot. And I absorbed all this feedback, and then little by little, I spent all of 2019 cutting. Literally, anytime I worked on my book in 2019, it was rewriting and cutting what I already had written. And then when I secured an agent to represent me during the summer through business contacts that I'd already made, the agency came back with recommendations for more cutting. So I spent the fall of 2019 cutting more. The original manuscript was like 550 pages. The current manuscript that sold was 375 pages. And I still got to cut a little bit more. I'm waiting on the Putnam editor to give me a line-by-line edit. And it was just a process I wasn't used to. But the more comfortable I got with it, the more I did it, the better I think the book got. I never did it thinking that it was going to sell, hoping it was going to sell, but not thinking it was going to be something I was going to do to make money, because book publishing really doesn't make you a lot of money. Very, very few authors in book publishing makes considerable enough money to almost warrant the amount of time it takes to do it. But the agent really believed in the book. The agency, which is UTA, United Talent Agency, they really believed in the book, and the television people on UTA's side really liked it. Everybody was really responding to the characters as much as the story, and that's very important, because publishers are looking for characters that appeal to readers, because so much book reading now is character driven more so than plot driven. And television, obviously, of course, is very character driven. So when the agent sent it out, he was going to send it out to all the top, like 10 top publishers, and I was very wary of it, because I never saw it as a hardcover book. I thought it was just going to be a mystery trade paperback that if it sold 100 copies, I'd be happy. I just wanted to do it, and I wanted to think about getting a chance to do something different in my 60s. I just turned 58. And then when he sent it out to all the top publishers, I had very mixed feelings about it, because I had co-written a screenplay with a friend of mine, and UTA represented it about 6 years ago, and they pulled the trick of sending the screenplay out to 20 of the top producers in Hollywood, and it was the year that every original science fiction movie that came out bombed. Like Elysium was one of them. There's a whole bunch of others. I lost track because it was a while ago. But every original movie bombed, and as a result, every single producer said, we're not making original science fiction movies, and that's it. The screenplay, which was over 2 years of work, just died. It vanished. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I was very wary of sending it out to all the top publishers, because I personally, honestly, didn't think it was a top publisher book. I didn't have enough faith in the material. And the response we got was phenomenally surprising. We had 5 publishers bidding on it. It turned into an auction, which is great and doesn't happen that often, especially for a first-time author. I did talks with every single editor who was interested in purchasing it, because they wanted to get to know you and hear from you and get an idea of what you're going to be like. I came to them from a different standpoint, because I'm not a kid. I'm not a young guy looking to make a career for himself as a book writer. You know, I'm 58 years old and I've already been around the racetrack several times, you know. So I've also been an editor, which is the job they have, you know. I'm probably 10, 15 years older at a minimum to almost every single editor I talk to. So it just changes the dynamic and the perspective a little bit. I am a seasoned professional that understands the publishing business, so I totally understand what their needs are because I've lived their needs, you know. So that those talks actually enhanced the bidding because it made editors have more confidence in bidding on a first-time author. That's when 2 publishers were left, and that's when they upped it to a 2-book deal instead of a 1-book deal, which I really liked because I like the idea of doing this as a series of books with these characters being the leads. And then we just made a decision on one of the 2 publishers because it was really a business decision more than anything. But also for me a little bit of an emotional one too, because my first job out of college was working for Putnam Publishing in 1983. I was there 83 to 85 before I started working at Marvel Comics. So having Putnam be the company that bought the book and is going to publish the book, to me was kind of nice. It's a little bit of symmetry. You know, the company I first worked for is now publishing my book, you know, 30 years later. So I thought that was kind of cool. And now it becomes the nuts and bolts reality of what are my editor notes going to be? What do I got to correct? What do I got to tweak and fix? Get started on the outline for the second book, which I already had a lot in place for, and then work with the editors to start honing the second book, and then starting to write the second book probably by the latter half of this year. And in the meantime, luckily, I can still do some comic work. I can still do other things as they come up. I'm finishing up a miniseries for Marvel, but I can't say who the character is because they haven't announced it yet. And I'm still working on season 2 of Outrage, which hasn't even started yet because we got to bank about 10 chapters before we can even launch, since it's a weekly chapter drop. So you know, it gives me a chance to, I don't have to just do the book because I'm not good when I'm only doing one thing. I'm usually at my best when I get to juggle 2 or 3 things at the same time. And if I can be a book writer predominantly through my 60s, I'm okay with that. That'd be pretty freaking fun, you know. In the meantime, they're going to try to sell it as a TV series too. So they're going to take the manuscript out and try to present it to a bunch of producers and try to gauge and get some interest going. It's very sellable as a TV show, I think, because it has automatically built-in diversity to it because my town is very diverse. It has a lot of humor in it. It has a lot of a lot of quirky supporting characters kind of thing, but it's all pretty grounded in reality. A little bit heightened in terms of, you know, the character interactions, but the story setting is very realistic. I had a rule for myself when I started, which was no tights, no flights, no action, no gunshots. And no car chases. One of the lead characters is 8 months pregnant with her 5th kid. So she's not going to be involved in too many martial arts battles during the course of this book.
She's not going out wearing pouches on her suit.
No, she is not. No, she won't. Maybe she'll have like a little nookie in one pouch, and maybe she'll have a diaper bag in the other pouch. But you know, I just wanted to write. For lack of a better description, something adult. And it's not really adult because it's very coarse and very rude and very sarcastic. So, you know, it's not Wuthering Heights or anything like that. It's not Jane Austen. But it is not superheroes. It is not science fiction. It is not fantasy.
Which has got to be relief because you've been doing that for what, 30 years now?
Yeah.
You got to do something. You always got to do something different to keep your mind fresh. And
it was a lot of fun. It was a relief to get to do that. But it also at the same time you realize what great supportive crutches fight scenes are, and getting to do extreme fantasy or science fiction becomes a real creative crutch when you're writing, because when you're dealing with the mundanity of suburban life on a day-to-day basis, that's actually harder to write in a way that you're thinking or hoping you're keeping your reader's interest. And then that was, I feel good about it now, more so than I did 2 months ago. I feel more confident about the work now just because of the response I got. And that confidence comes from the fact that almost every single one of the editors, one of the things they really liked, the characters, the two main characters were the first things they really liked. The second thing was the attention to detail about our lives in suburbia. You know, it's funny that the only editor who didn't bid on it is a Manhattan resident. all the other editors who bid on it are suburbanites and understand and get the suburban experience.
Jersey, who cares about Jersey?
No, Long Island guys, Westchester guys.
Oh,
Anybody who has to commute, anybody who lives in a house instead of an apartment, anybody who has to worry about taking the trash out on Tuesday and Friday, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
That they all got that. They all liked it. They all liked my descriptions of things that we go through every day through our commutes and in the parking lots and going to the supermarket and all of that stuff, because that's all part and parcel of what the characters go through on a daily basis, you know? An important scene in the book between two women who are talking about when and if the murder gets revealed, it could create a lot of racial, cultural tension in the town. And they're having this conversation at a Chuck E. Cheese, which both of them hate, but they needed a place where the kids could be distracted so that they could talk about this subject, you know? So that kind of stuff, I think, went a long way towards making them understand that this is a book that had something to say within the context of trying to be an entertaining mystery story, you know?
All right. That's all awesome. It sounds exciting. I took the 2-book deal the wrong way. I was like, I didn't even think about sequel. I was like, oh, you doing another book too? Another original book? I was like, I totally read that wrong. But that's awesome that this is going to be a series.
It doesn't have to be. That's the thing. If I come to them and say I want to do a book about, a murder in a space station, I can probably talk them into it if I have a good story. But the truth of the matter is that I have been a writer of fiction within a structured story world, an existing story world, or a story world that I'm a part of having created for 30 years. So my mind automatically thinks that way. Charles Soule is an excellent writer, lawyer, comic book writer, who's now just published his second book, I think. And
awesome.
Each of the 2 books are completely different, right? I don't think that way. I don't think I have enough ideas for that in my brain. I think once I have these characters, where do their lives go? That's how I think, you know? So I already had ideas for 4 books with this story world set up, you know? And some of it become natural extrapolations of the characters' lives in slightly different phases, because the main character one has her 5th kid by the end of the book, and those kids are all going to start growing up. So how you deal with your kid when they're in 6th grade or 5th grade is really different than how you deal with them when they're a freshman in high school. So to me, I'm thinking, what are the evolutions of those characters? And since every book in my mind has a theme, each story has a different perspective on a subject relating to suburbia. So the first book is about cultural identity in suburbia, the fear of white flight and cultural change among the white community within some of these suburban towns that have seen massive changes in the last 30 years of their
I 100% get that. I live in Ocean County, and Lakewood is a huge subject.
Yes, that's a great example. Lakewood's a great example. And so that's a definite that's not just a definite thing. That is the theme of the entire first book, how we handle that for good and bad. And the second book, the whole theme would be marriage, what goes on behind our closed doors that we don't talk to each other about. And that springs from finding out something in a couple's lives if they're getting a divorce that you never realized about that you never thought about that with them. Oh, they were having that problem, or the typical that we've seen a gajillion times before. When a serial killer is arrested, they talk to the neighbor, and the neighbor always says, well, he kept to himself, but he seemed like a nice guy.
Oh, yeah, seems like a nice guy.
Meanwhile, he had body parts in his refrigerator. So that's a suburban neighbor. What do we know about them, So the second book is a little bit more going into that. And the lies we tell ourselves too. The lead character is a very, very smart woman, but she's lived too many lies in her life already, and she's only 33. So the second book is going to really pick apart the lies she's lived within her own marriage while she's in the process of trying to solve a murder. Not what she doesn't know, whether it's a murder or not, the death of the husband of one of her friends. So she's got to find out whether that was a murder or not in the second book. So we pick apart the marital relationships of our friends in suburban life. So each book would have its own little shtick, its own little thing within the context of trying to solve a murder. So that's the goal. If I can get to do that, if the first book is successful and they like the second book outline, then that's my goal, to try to get to do that. If I could do a book every 2 years or so, and if this thing could sell as a TV series, that would be a freaking fantastic way to live my 60s into my 70s. I wouldn't mind that at all.
That's awesome. And I got to congratulate you on the book deal, and that just seeing how excited you are about the book makes me want to pick it up if I drive out to Barnes and Noble now, if it were out there, and get it. Especially New Jersey. Cause I'm addicted to even I don't know, even I identify with New York stuff too. Cause that's why I like reading Spider-Man, and that's what I identify with the culture. But in New Jersey, like bang, bang, I will definitely feel like I'm in that book, or I feel like I can understand everything that's going on there.
Yeah, and look, you live, you're in Kentucky, right? Or
school right now. Kentucky.
Okay, yeah. So you realize, just like I do, because I travel so much to all over the country, that there are so many things that are translatable from one region to another region. There may be some differences in demographics, there may be some differences in politics, but so many of our day-to-day realities are the same. The same stuff that we go through when we're bringing our kids up in suburbia, the sports, the education system, the schooling, the commute or the car issues, going to the supermarket, all of that kind of crap, your weekly supermarket shopping, that's translatable no matter where you live for the most part. So you could be living in a suburb of Phoenix, or you could be living in a suburb of New York City, and those are relatable things for all of us, and I think that the book could have, I hope, will have an appeal because of those things, more so than just because it is a pretty New Jersey centric book. The totality of all the action takes place in New Jersey, so to me it feels very much like a Jersey book, because it's the area that I've lived in for since 1988, for the most part, and not all that different from the area I grew up in, which was Sayreville and Old Bridge.
Yeah, a lot of people can identify with suburbia. All of New Jersey just happens to be suburbia. I guess the one question, I've actually really covered a lot of what I was going to ask you. I guess the one thing is, when I was reading the description of the characters, which you've gone into a lot, it's former FBI profiler and former Pulitzer Prize winner. What made you go for that instead of active in your characters?
Well, one of the things that is pretty personal, but worked very well to apply it to the characters, is that I had this idea for this book when I was around 32, 33. And one of the great fears I had when I was younger is, at that age, because of the work I was doing, I had already accomplished, both professionally and financially, pretty much more than I ever thought I would get a chance to accomplish. So having accomplished that already by that age, writing X-Men, the #1 comic, and all those books selling what they were selling with the royalties we were making back then, I asked myself, what the hell am I going to do for the next 25 years? What if this is the absolute pinnacle of my writing career, and it happened 3-4 years into starting as a writer for Marvel, right? So I thought, what an interesting idea to look at two characters whose greatest successes were 10 years in the past, but they're still super young, you know? So I thought, what if she wasn't an FBI profiler. She never even got to Quantico. She helped solve a serial killer case while she was in college in Manhattan. She came up with several of the things that broke the case. And instead of getting to go to Quantico to be an FBI profiler, she got pregnant. And she decided to keep the baby and get married to her college boyfriend. Even though in her own heart of hearts, that's not necessarily what she wanted to do. So by the time she's 33, she's now pregnant with her 5th kid. And it calls into question, how can someone so smart box themselves into a corner like this, you know? And what are her frustrations over the life she's lived, which isn't a life that in many ways was giving her an opportunity to be her best self, you know? And Kenny Ellis, Kenny Lee, I'm sorry, who's the co-lead, his was a little bit different, but to me it worked just as well, which is, while he was in college at Rutgers, he basically broke the story that led over the course of several months to the resignation of the governor of New Jersey. So I took a little bit of the McGreevy story and applied some fiction to it, and thought to myself, what happens to this guy when he's one of the youngest people to ever win a Pulitzer Prize for journalism, because he ended up working with the Star Ledger to get the story fleshed out and broken, because it first broke in the Rutgers Daily Targum, which is their daily newspaper.
Hey, go the Daily Targum. I check them out a lot.
Okay. So what happens to him when he doesn't get the next big story? So he's 25, 26, and he hasn't done anything since that huge story happened. And then what if he makes the wrong choices? There's downsizing in newspapers, so he gets let go of his job at the Daily News, and he ends up working for the Ledger, and he ends up making up quotes and sources for a story he had, trying to take down a drug company, a pharmaceutical company, and he had the details on what the pharmaceutical company was doing wrong, but he was lacking in incredible confirmation from sources who wouldn't be willing to talk. So he made up the sources to confirm what he knew was true. So
that's not a good one.
So he got caught, and he got kicked out of the Star Ledger. And the irony being that it wasn't that the story was inaccurate; it was how he tried to present it was false. So he's at rock bottom. He's running out of any money he made from the book deal for selling the book about the Jersey governor's downfall. Any money he had made when he was younger, is starting to really tap him out. He's working at a weekly newspaper, barely making any money at all. So he's pretty bitter and sarcastic, and knows that he has no one to blame but himself for that. But looks to blame everyone else in the world if he can. And he's only 29, not even 30 yet, and she's 33. And they knew each other when they were younger, because she dated his older brother for a couple of years while they were in high school. So he always had a bit of a crush on her, even though it was very unrequited. So when they start working together to try to solve this murder, each of them are bringing a lot of baggage to the table. Each of them are bringing a lot of need for redemption. And that helps fuel both of their drive. And they don't even get along that well, because each of them have their own issues. She's a little arrogant and smarter than everyone, and he's a little arrogant and more arrogant than everyone. so the combination.
You did great when you were young, and you feel like you're just the hot shit.
Yeah. And and you didn't grow up enough. You didn't learn enough from those experiences. So the first book is really the process of her coming to terms with the mistakes she knows she's made and not blaming other people for those mistakes. And he's coming to terms with the fact that he didn't grow up when he needed to grow up. He didn't. So each of them, for the most part, are going to come into the second book with a slightly more mature perspective on themselves. And to me, that's important. If I get to do several books, each one ends with a major line that becomes a major status quo shift. And I don't want to give them away because I don't want to give away the last lines of the books. But each end of each book would be a major status quo shift for the characters. And that's fun too, because it means that when the next book starts, it could be 6 months later, it could be a year later, but either way, something has happened in their lives that have changed their lives a little bit.
So yeah, that's great, and I can see the inspiration right there, because I was just picturing, it's like you're thinking, at least with the Pulitzer Prize winner, what if I just give any random example? Obviously, I could be wrong. I wrote maybe a great 24 issues of X-Force, and that was it. And then I didn't do anything after that. Like, I guess, and that was one of your fears, and just going, and he's living off of that version with the Fall of the Governor and his book sales, and then just completely like shitting the bed afterwards. So yeah, I can definitely see the fears you described in those characters, and I'm definitely excited to see the book. Yeah, a lot because of the Jersey culture, and I love all of that. But yeah, I love the solving darkest secrets, because I'm an X-Files fan, so I love anything FBI dark secrets. So I'll definitely look into it, and it's exciting to see. And again, congratulations on getting the deal. So and again, we'll share more details at the end, but yeah, we'll be on the lookout for Suburban Dicks coming at 2021. I think I saw
first book. Suburban Dicks will come out 2021. Untitled second book will probably be 2022.
All right. Yep. I think everyone should definitely check it out. I'm definitely excited to see it. Or read it, not see it. Read it. So I guess I'll move on, and I promise it is only one X-Men question. I know you get bombarded with X-Men question. It's the only one that I think that I'm curious about is, have you been following the Hickman stuff?
Just the first series that they did, the two big books, Powers and House. I have not read any of the single issue releases. I tend to not buy regular monthly books anymore. I tend to read as trade paperbacks, because I feel that that's how the industry writes them now. So, I don't feel like spending $4 or $5 on a book that really is just a piece of the story. Whereas in the old days, you can get an entire story or a 2-part story, and that felt more complete. So I'll read a lot of that X stuff in trade paperbacks, but it may not be for another year or two. Like on digital, I just finished reading the first Bendis Superman trade paperback last night. So that was the first 6 issues of Superman that he wrote. That's over a year ago, right?
Yeah, 2018. Yeah.
Yeah,
and maybe the end of 2018. I think into 2019. So
yeah. So it was not the first miniseries, not the Man of Steel thing. I read that.
The first trade,
the first 6 issues of Superman with the Phantom Zone and the ugly bad guy,
Rogozar.
Yeah, there you go. So I just read it yesterday. I couldn't even remember the guy's name. So I tend to read stuff in trade paperback form, but I was very curious, because I like Hickman a lot as a conceptualist. I like his ideas. So I was curious to see what ideas he would bring to the X-Men. And those first 2 miniseries didn't let me down. I think it was full of big ideas. And that was fun to see that applied to the books in an interesting science fiction-y kind of way. More than ever, the books feel like they take place outside the mainstream Marvel universe, but at least now, in the current status quo, they have a justifiable reason for that, because they have their own place finally, So I have no idea how it's playing out on the monthly books at all.
The funny part about your comment about the trades is, yes, it's true, but with Hickman's X-Men so far, they've literally, I think, 4 issues, 4 different stories.
Oh, that's
I think
good.
they're all like, I think I heard someone even complain about that because, obviously nerd culture, everybody complains about something. But it's literally like 4 one-shots. And one is, I won't go into it because I know you're going to want to wait for it, is literally a Golden Girls spoof.
That's funny. That's
Yes.
good. You need to do that. I think. Look, they asked me to do a 5-issue miniseries of a character that I've written before, but that's not saying much because I've written pretty much every single character in the Marvel universe before. And I told them that I had an idea for how I wanted to do it, but I wanted each issue to be self-contained with running subplots culminating in a final issue sort of a thing. And they were fine with that. So each issue of this miniseries is in essence a self-contained adventure that is taking the character from point A to point B to point C as the character is tracking a bigger story down, like through the actions of each issue. But issue 2 is a beginning, middle, and end. Issue 3 is a beginning, middle, and end. And I wanted to do it that way just because I didn't feel like decompressing and stretching it all out, and so far so good because I've already written 4 issues and it's been going well, and we have a great artist drawing it, and he's already drawn the first issue, and he's told me how much fun he's having because each issue has a bunch of stuff in it, but it's also very open and loose for him to be able to draw big. And
giving him a lot of toys to play with?
Not so much a lot of toys to play with, a lot of big panel opportunities because the nature of the character calls for big panel opportunities. So I'm trying to give him each issue. I'm trying to give them at least 3 or 4, 2 or 3 panel pages. Not so much the Bendis style double page spreads or anything like that, because I got too much story in each issue to be able to give away too much page space. That's the thing. I'm reading the Superman stuff. I don't know how Bendis juggles his plots. It's amazing to me, actually. I really respect it a lot because you can feel like you got a lot, and yet it was 6 double-page spreads throughout a book, an issue. It's like a 20-page issue with 6 double-page spreads. And how he manages to juggle that while giving the artist something big to draw, but still keeping the story moving forward is pretty cool. But then you realize, wait, I'm reading all of his work as a trade paperback, so it's a completely different reading experience. When I was reading it as a monthly comic, I didn't like it because I never felt I got enough per issue.
Yeah, Bendis definitely does right for the trade. Yeah, I know that's how he does it, or how it's structured typically.
Yeah. I'm curious about where Hickman will go with that stuff, just as much as I am how other writers will handle it, and how consistent it will be to itself. I mean, Jordan's the editor. Jordan White's the editor, and he's a really good editor. But the X books always go all over the place, and it's very hard to keep a tight control over 8 different creative teams. So I never hold out much hope anymore for consistent continuity and a tight story world. But then again, at my age and with the amount I read, I don't care either. It's not a priority to me anymore. So more than anything, I'm just curious because every time they've done anything radical with the X-Men, it feels like 2 years later it all shifted back to status quo boring again. So I'm curious to see if 2 years from now this will all shift back to status quo boring again. Their idea of trying something really new will be to have all the characters live in a mansion in Westchester. So we'll see.
Yeah, I'm definitely. I'm a huge Hickman fan, and definitely looking forward to see where that goes. And since we're on the topic of editorial, I guess it's a good.
I need to take a half a second.
Go ahead.
I gotta blow my nose. Everybody in the audience, listen. This is exciting. You're listening to one of the legendary comic book creators blow his nose.
Won't get it anywhere else, but we're young, but just us.
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
No problem.
I apologize. Yeah. I apologize, everyone, for that, but I had no choice.
No problem. But yeah, since as you were talking on the topic of editorial, I wanted to ask, since he's my personal favorite character, your time with Tim Drake and that was a very crazy time, or a very editorial. DC's all editorial crazy. I guess both of them are. With Batman, since that was around the death of Bruce Wayne time, I believe.
It was interesting because Mike Martz, who's been a friend of mine for years, he worked for me at Acclaim. I worked with him at Marvel, and I've worked with him plenty of times since then. Obviously, he's a really good editor in that he lets the creators he knows he has to give complete free rein to go wild, and then he hires creators who know how to keep it real and provide stability. So in his Bat books at that time, Grant Morrison was just all over the place with some crazy bug-ass fun crap, which is what Grant does phenomenally well.
Peak Morrison.
He's a brilliant thinker. And sometimes he thinks so much that no one can keep up with him, including the reader. I guess I'm talking about myself in that case, because sometimes I have no clue what the hell he's writing about, but I love what I'm reading. So Mike knew to let him run with the things he was doing with Batman, but he knew that he had to have other creators in the line that would help ground those stories by providing a grounded perspective. So when he asked me to take over Robin, first of all, it was very, very difficult because I love Tim Drake and I love Robin, and I really respect Chuck Dixon and the work he did on that character. And I knew that there was crap happening between Chuck and DC at the time, so I felt very awkward and I checked with Chuck, not asking him permission, but just telling him that they've asked me to do this. Is it all right? And he said, I'd be, if someone's going to take it over, my situation's not comfortable, but if someone's going to take it over, I'd be happy if it were someone like you. So I said, I appreciate that. And I took over the book knowing that it was going to be canceled. So I knew we didn't know exactly what issue would be the last one, but we knew it was going to be canceled. So
one note, sorry, just I guess what you're referring to is the time, just for the audience, Chuck Dixon did come back to the book for I don't even know, it might have been 3 issues or something. It was very short, if I remember. And then, the issues came back, and I believe that's the time frame you were talking about, right?
Yeah. So but that also happened to be when Grant was doing all the stuff with Batman, and we knew that Batman was going to be dying and all this other stuff. So I wrote Robin knowing that it was going to be launched as Red Robin, and also knowing that I wasn't going to be writing Red Robin. So my job really was to try to bring into focus everything that he has been and do it within the context of all this other crazy crap happening with Batman. And I loved it. I loved working with Freddie Williams III, the artist. I loved Tim Drake.
Amazing artist. He drew an amazing Tim Drake.
Yeah, he did. And I was very, very proud of the run we had. Really proud of it. Readers really responded very positively to my handling of the character. So then when I got called a year later, and I was doing other stuff for Mike Martz in the interim during all of that stuff,
Azrael, right?
Yeah, I think Azrael, I think the Gotham Gazette stuff, a bunch of annuals. He kept asking me to do things, and since I like the characters and I like that world and I like Mike a lot, it was easy to do. And then he asked me to come back to Red Robin because Chris Yost had a whole bunch of movie stuff happening and he just couldn't handle the schedule. And Chris had done a good job. I was actually really angry at him for doing a good job.
You did tell me that.
It really pissed me off because you don't ever want to see someone handling the character better than you. So it really bothered me a lot. So when Mike asked me to come back and I knew Marcus Toe would still be the artist, I loved Marcus's work. So I was thrilled to get to write the character again, and I could have written them for another 10 years without a problem, and I could still be writing them today, quite honestly. But so it was a lot of fun to get to do. DC being what it is, and then launching New 52 with the horrific editorial way they did it. I lost a lot of my interest in them and their characters as a result of all of that. I felt very frustrated that we were hitting our stride. We were doing some good stuff with Red Robin, and we could have kept going with that character. And to see what they did with him in Teen Titans and everything else was really disappointing. So I've heard that other writers have recovered the character since then in the Bat books, but I haven't read any of it, so I don't know. And I don't plan to read any of it, so it doesn't matter to me one way or the other. as much as I love the character, I feel like it's a chapter that in a book that's been closed.
Well, yeah, it was a great because I did a lot of binge reading last year was when I really got into all of comics. So I read like all of Robin in like a couple like a week or two, depending on how classes were going. And yeah, I do remember. I think the most notable moment for me was I think you blowing up the back of his head at the end of Robin. Yeah.
Wait. When did I blow the back
No,
of
it's
his
not
head
that he
off?
didn't blow up, but he had a giant skull. Remember, he wore the red Robin mask, I believe, at the last part of the book. He had like giant. I forget. It was like when he was fighting. I forget who's the general's name. The little general, the little general kid in like the last few issues of Robin.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he got like he was in an explosion. Yeah, like he had to wear the red Robin.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah. Okay, yeah.
but
Yeah. No, and look, it was fun.
it was a
It was
great
a good
book.
window of time for me. I enjoyed it. Working for DC has always been a bit of a struggle for me for a lot of reasons, but I still love a lot of their characters. That even with the insanity of Grant's stuff, and having to figure out what was happening next in Grant's stuff, working on those on that character and working with Mike on those books was a lot of fun.
And it definitely was awesome to read. I know a lot of people, including myself, would love to see more Tim Drake stuff from you. But yeah, I mean, the way the tides roll and all that, and
I never
just
say never in
never
this
say never.
industry, but I also it's not something I would actively seek out. Um, so it's like even if they came to me and said, "Would you like to write Tim Drake?" Because of my experiences with DC, I would require so many caveats that I'm not 100% sure that they would care to put those up there. But hey, look, as far as comics are concerned, I'm well past my prime. I'm past my expiration date as a comic book writer for Marvel and DC. There's entire new generations of writers that the editors go to because it's their own peer group, and I completely understand that, and I completely accept it because I was part of a generational change that got rid of a lot of the writers that I grew up reading. It's very common and very natural. The fact I'm even getting to do something like a miniseries for Marvel on a character I like a lot with an artist I like a lot is kind of unexpected and fun. It came out of the blue too. Like, the editor called me the week after Labor Day last year. The editor called me and offered me this, and I never asked him, why the hell are you calling me to offer me something after years of not doing anything for you guys? I didn't want to know the answer. So I just said, you know what? I like that character a lot. I like your initial pitch on what his status quo is. So yeah, I'm interested. And it's been a really good experience. But to tell you the truth, they could ask me to do something once I'm done with this miniseries, and it could be the exact opposite. It could be a really ugly experience, or I may not be interested in doing it because I don't like the premise they're setting up. So I tend to take things from the majors now with a tremendously huge grain of salt. And I think it's better for me to be very wary of them. And I think it's better for them not to ask me to do too much stuff.
Oh, yeah, you got the books coming out again. Suburban Dicks coming 2021.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's exciting. I guess to close out the comic section of the podcast, or for the short little bit after, because we've been talking for a while, and I'm very grateful for your time. When will we? I'm not going to ask for confidential information. Are we going to get the solicitation soon?
I have no idea.
No
I
idea.
asked the editor an email like a week ago when I delivered the fourth script, and I said, "Is this thing scheduled yet?" And he never responded. So I have no idea. I'm assuming it will probably be a summer or fall project. I have no idea what they're soliciting right now. I don't pay attention to any of that anymore. So whatever. What are they soliciting now? Are they soliciting
April
like May?
just came out.
April?
Yeah.
It may be late spring, early summer. The only one issue out of 5 has been drawn yet. They may want to get 2 or 3 in the can before they even announce it. It's not necessarily time sensitive in terms of connecting to other stuff. It connects and touches on some things that have happened in the Marvel universe, but none of that stuff is time sensitive in that an event happening in June is going to lead into this miniseries in July. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't think they need to worry about that from a timing standpoint. I think it might just end up being when they're comfortable that enough of the art is done that they're going to be able to ship this thing on a monthly basis, which I would really, really like if they did that, because I come from a world where you got your book out every single month, and that was your job to do that. So I prefer the work I do come out on the schedule that it was intended to be released on.
All right. Yeah, well, definitely excited. I'll be on the lookout to see what that project is, because I'm definitely curious. And all right, that was comics, and now we got to talk about the real big news of the week. We have a ranked Rutgers basketball team.
Yeah, man. You know what? I'm glad it took a little while to get there, because they needed their play to convince people, and I think that the way that they lost Illinois on the road, but kept it really, really close until the last minute. They only lost by 3, but if they hadn't screwed up, they would have won that game too.
It was so close. They did everything wrong. I talked to one of the On the Banks, one of the blog writers. I said, I listed like a laundry list of everything that went wrong, and they should have or could have won the game still.
Yes,
it was
very
crazy.
much
This
so.
team sets themselves up pretty well. I mean, they're unbeatable at the rack. And
Yeah,
have you been out?
I've been to 2 games already, and I got a third one in February I'm going to go to. I was just at the Indiana game.
Awesome.
And it was great. And it wasn't even they don't play good basketball, so it's not really like you're watching a well-oiled machine. You're just watching a bunch of guys that don't quit. They play so hard, and they play harder than the other team does. And when another team is visiting the rack, the combination of the Rutgers players wearing them down defensively and the fans being so loud, it really starts to unnerve the other team. And I watched it happen now. I watched it in the Seton Hall game on TV, that it actually unnerved the Seton Hall players what was happening.
Oh, it was crazy. It was 14-0 start to the game.
Yeah, and then I watched it just now against Minnesota, and at the Indiana game, I watched the Indiana team start to buckle from the pressure that the defense is putting on them, combined with the noise that the crowd is making. And I've been to the rack when it's half empty and it's quiet and dead. And so I know the difference. When it's sold out, it's actually an uncomfortable place to watch a game because it's so freaking loud. I don't even, at my advanced age, I don't need to hear all that noise. I don't want to hear music blaring every second. I leave the games and my throat is completely shot because I can't even have a conversation with the guy sitting next to me. So the Minnesota game was really, really cool. It was good to see. I'm really curious to see what they do on the road tomorrow, because if they can win on the road, that would be a big difference. They got a lot of home games left still, which makes also a big difference for them. I'm glad they're ranked. To me, it's always, are you good enough to get into the tournament? And we're not there yet, but the team has earned what they've gotten. And I like Peichel as a coach. I've liked him as a coach from the minute they got him. I knew how good he was.
He's done an amazing. It's just incredible. Yeah. It's immeasurable what he's done, and it's only been 4 seasons. This is his fourth season.
This is his fourth season.
It's amazing.
He's done a really good job everywhere he's been. He's a good coach. He knows, not only does he know how to recruit, which is so vital for a college coach, he also knows the X's and O's. And there's a lot of guys that have one but not the other. He knows how to run the game. He knows when to call timeouts. He knows the right defense sets to play. He knows the right way to minimize the other team's strengths, which they've done phenomenally well. They shut down the other team's best players almost every game they play.
Like Lamar Stevens from Penn State, he's lauded as a top 5 Big Ten player, and he was just invisible throughout the entire game.
He was invisible. Yeah. And they just did it now to the guy from Minnesota too.
Yeah, I forget it. A Curry. But he was shut down to the second half. Yeah.
So that's just when a coach. Anytime a college coach can get 18, 19-year-old kids to buy into playing defense, he's doing a hell of a coaching job because these kids grow up watching the pros not play defense. So they think they don't have to play defense either. And when you're a coach and you know that you have minimal shooting talent, which they have minimal shooting talent, then you know that how important it is to play defense, wear the other team down, which gives you a chance for your speed to make a difference, because a lot of the baskets Rutgers gets is a result of the other team being tired and their ability to blow by them for layups sometimes and cut through the paint for points, because the other team's feet, they're just heavy. Their legs are heavy, and it's because they've endured pressure all game long on defense, So yeah, no, it's fun. I'm really enjoying it. It's been, after so many weak years and so many weak coaches, and mediocre recruiting, that this guy seems to recruit to character first, and it seems to show in the nature of the team,
He has a system, and he's getting guys that will play to it and show their strengths in it, and it's amazing to see them develop.
Yeah. Well, and again, it's only halfway through the season. Yeah. We still got a long way to go. Yeah. We still got the tournament bubble to break into. I think there's a predisposed inclination on the part of a lot of the people the NCAA that votes for that to have prejudices against teams that have not had good programs and have not historically made the tournament. They almost always will opt for a team of equal record who has made the tournament. So I'm wary of Rutgers getting the respect and the attention. Of course, if they're in the top 25, they're making the tournament. There's no way they can't, right? But I don't know that they can stay in the top 25. If they lose to Iowa tomorrow, I bet you they drop out of the top 25 because the voters will just go, see, all right, we gave you your token, then we're done. Now you got to earn your way back in all over again,
Yeah, tomorrow's a very important litmus test to see. Yes, they've dominated at home, and 19-0 at home might do it. They've said a lot of people have said it might do it. But if they can beat Iowa, they did it last year with less as a worse team.
Yes, you're right.
They did it last year as a worse team and blew the doors off. And so if they win tomorrow night, it's number one, 11 games over 500 for Rutgers in late January, which is amazing.
Oh no, it'll be phenomenal. Yeah. If they win tomorrow night, to me it's a signature win for the year, because it can absolutely propel them to the rest of the year being really, really good. It changes the dynamics if they can win one or two more Big Ten road games. They have one already this year, or two. I think they have two Big Ten road wins. But
I think it might be just Nebraska right now. I'm not sure, but I have to go back. But I think it's just Nebraska. It might be just Nebraska right now. But they came close to Michigan State, who's really good. Illinois could have been a win, as we said, and they struggled to close it out. Everything went wrong for them. So I have a lot of faith for this team. They've never been blown out on the road or since really early this year. So I'm hoping for a win tomorrow, and I think it's very realistic to say they finish pretty well, but they got to, keep their heads on and keep playing the way they've been.
Yeah, they can. That's the other thing to worry about with a young team, because they are a very young team, is letting the hype get to them, letting them start to believe in their own press. That's always a negative, and you want to try to avoid that with college kids. We'll see, though.
Do you have a favorite player?
No, not really. No, not really. I really do like them all. I like Geo Baker tremendously. But it's not like he's a favorite player or nothing. Yeah. I just like him. I like how he plays. I like his style. But I just think that a lot of they're lunch bucket guys, and that's I like that a lot. That's fun to see. I was always a lunch bucket athlete. I brought my lunchbox to work, and I slogged it through, because I never succeeded based on pure skill or anything, or athleticism. I was just a grinder when I played soccer, when I played anything else,
I was just bad at everything. So, and I gotta ask, since we gotta be it can be unreasonable. Do you have a prediction for the rest of the year
for this team?
For this team,
Um, I think that they're gonna hit a little bit of a wall when they start playing some of the better teams in the Big Ten. I I don't think they'll go undefeated at home because I think they got a couple tough home games coming up. I think is Maryland at home?
Maryland is at home, but I think they literally were losing to one of the worst teams on the road, I think in Northwestern, and they have not performed on the road at all. So that's why a lot of people are giving the Rutgers the edge in that
Yeah, no.
game.
I
Yeah,
look. You can't predict a
yeah.
team's going to go undefeated at home, like 19-0. You can't predict they're going to do that. So you've got to think at some point they might hit a wall. Um, but I think they'll win. They'll win 22, 23 games. And I hope that that's enough to make the tournament. I'd be disappointed at this point right now with their record being what it is. I'd be disappointed if they didn't make the tournament. The NIT would be a bit of a letdown.
Which is
Um,
funny because they haven't made it in over a decade and a
Exactly.
half.
And yes, and I was going to follow that up by saying, and that is incredibly unfair to them because they haven't made any postseason play in forever. They made the NIT a couple of years ago, I think a few years ago, but they're a very young team. They only have 2 seniors graduating, and one of them barely plays at all. And one of them is a transfer student, is his first year playing, I
Yeah,
think. So
quasi.
that yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So they're an incredibly young team, and they may have a really good recruiting class this year as a result of what they've had. I was at the game where the fans all started chanting this big recruit's name who was
Oh,
there at the
yeah.
game.
Cliff Omarui. There's
Yes,
we
Cliff.
want
Yeah,
Cliff.
yeah, yeah.
We
That
want Cliff.
and me and my friend, we couldn't understand what the hell the fans were chanting. We were like, "What are they saying?" And my other friend texted us, who wasn't at the game. He texted us and told us what was going on. And the noise during that chant was like overwhelming. It was so loud. And if you're an 18-year-old kid, a 17-year-old kid, come on, you gotta. And then Shiano walked over to him and said, "You hear that? You have to stay in New Jersey. That's why you stay in New Jersey,
Yeah.
because you'll never get this anywhere else." He said. So if you're a 17-year-old kid, that's gotta be a little intimidating, but also pretty exciting to have to hear that. I hope he stays because I think after Baker graduates, then the next things is Harper and McConnell.
Okay, he's a
And
youngster. He's a
Mulcahy,
lot of
and
potential.
then someone like Cliff Omayuri and all of those guys. That's the other thing. You got to keep it going. You can't have a good season.
Yeah,
You need you
multiple
need
keep
you need to have
building.
3, 4, 5 years in a row to build a program, and that's what Shiano did with the football team. And then after he left, it fell apart. But he it took 5 years to get there, but then he had 5, 6 consecutive years of having really good, solid teams winning games. So as good as Peichel is, and as much as I like him, it just can't be a 1-year thing. And quite honestly, I don't think it will be because of the youth of the team. If 4 of their 5 stars were seniors, I'd be a little worried. But that's not the case at all.
All right. So I guess the last Rutgers basketball question would be: does this feel, since you did bring up Shiano, does it feel like that equivalent to that 2006 in football? Like, does it feel like
Um,
their 2006, their coming out party, or it's for that era? Because of course Shiano it fell after Shiano.
Yeah, yeah, no, yes, it does actually. Yeah, it does. It feels like it feels like what the university and the program felt like with that Louisville win and that big season, um, getting to the bowl game. I think they lost their first bowl game, but then they won a string of
Oh,
a bunch of
a
consecutive
bunch
bowl
like 4 in a
games.
row.
Yeah, yeah. So I think this has that feeling. It's different though. Football and basketball are very different. Just not the least of which is the sheer amount of times they play, which gives you plenty of opportunities to slip up and trip. Less more so than football to me. But I'm not a big fan of predicting sports and what's gonna happen because it never happens the way you predict. I just think that the coach has done such a good job of laying a foundation down for the kind of players he wants to get and the way he wants to play. And to me, that's the most important thing. If he can maintain both of those things, the kind of player he recruits and the way they play, then the program gains stability and stays a good program. Does that mean it stays a top 25 program? I don't know. It's never going to be a top 5 program because I don't think Rutgers can be, not with any level of consistency. But I think it can become a perennial top 25 program. And I'd be fine with that. That's good that's good for me. I'm not asking
for a lot of people. Yeah, they can.
I'm a New York Jets fan. I'm a New York Jets fan. We don't ask for too much.
All right. Yeah, we can hope for the best, and hopefully they make the tournament because they look like on a good track right now. They're coming together, and it's just exciting to watch it. Everybody's saying enjoy the journey. I mean, Pikel's saying enjoy the journey because this year, I mean, it's just amazing to watch and amazing to be go to a couple games and see that because I think I went to over break. I saw them. I was working a game for Rutgers against Caldwell.
Oh, were you? Okay.
Yeah, I did the marketing internship over the summer there, so I worked one game. So yes, all the people responsible for the loud music. Yeah, that's the people I worked for. That's
good. Tell them to lower the fucking volume so I can hear some God.
All right.
Just gotta hear my friend next to me talking to me, for God's sakes.
All right. Well, I've been very grateful for your time. So I got to do one more thing. It's very short, and I got to do it. We got to do the typical Garden State questions because I got to know where everything lies. You already said Central Jersey. So, okay, let's do this one. Wawa or Quick Check?
Neither. I'm a 7-Eleven guy because that's what
Really?
Yeah, I'm older than you by far, so I'm a 7-Eleven guy. I'm old enough that I'm a Krauser's guy, which I don't think there are
we had one of those.
Anymore.
We did have one of those, but I think it closed.
I was a Krauser's and a 7-Eleven kid growing up.
Oh, God, it's a cop-out answer, but whatever. I know people say
how is that a cop-out answer? It's actually so much a better answer than Wawa or Quick Check because there is no Wawa and Quick Check unless there was a 7-Eleven and a Krauser.
I know.
I used to ride my bike. We used to have a newsstand and then 2 7-Elevens all in bike riding distance, but none of them near each other. 3 different directions. So when I had to look for comics, and if one 7-Eleven didn't have an issue of a comic, I had a bike ride to the other 7-Eleven, and if they didn't have it, I had a bike ride to the newsstand store. So to me, all I think about when you say convenience stores is the hunt for comic books, because I'm old and I come from a day before there were direct market shops. So you had to scour the newsstands to find the books you wanted.
All right. Yep. Did not expect the answer, but yep, it shows the age difference. I think my dad.
You young shit. You don't know what's what.
My 24. I love my 24-hour Wawas. All right. Pork roll, Taylor ham.
Pork roll.
Good answer. Right answer.
Pork roll. I get the Taylor Hamites, but they're wrong.
They are wrong. It's not. That's a silly brand, and it was not even the right way the guy called it. It was called Taylor Pork Roll.
It's pork roll.
Yeah. Hoagie or sub?
Sub for me.
Yeah. So you are in that.
I called them subs growing up.
Yeah, because that's a South Jersey. That's a hoagie thing, and this is my defense for Central Jersey. This is not like North Jersey area, but we have people that like the Yankees and Giants. We say sub, and the only thing we don't do is we don't say Taylor ham, but that's it. I mean, that's why Central Jersey exists. And, that's pretty much all the big questions I got. I got to got to get the important ones out of the way.
I got to be honest with you. It just shows how pathetic Jersey is. Those are the main questions you ask.
Oh, these are, other people will say it's pathetic, but this is the religious questions of New Jersey.
Parkway or Turnpike?
Yeah, Parkway. Wait, I guess I got to ask this. Do your characters call it pork roll? It's suburban dicks.
And you know what? It doesn't even come up. It doesn't even come up.
Oh, man.
Yeah, there's a lot of bagel eating.
You got to have the bagels.
And
the
Kenny
pizza.
has no money, so he barely has any food in his house. He's always trying to bum food off somebody else. She's not. No, that's a good question. It'll be pork roll for them.
All right, that's the important. I have to say, unbiased, the most important part of your book. We got to know that answer.
Well, she's from New York. She's from Queens, so she didn't even move to Jersey till she was in middle school. So I don't even know if she'd weigh in on the pork roll thing. I don't know.
What is a pork roll?
Yeah, and he's Asian American, so I'm not 100% sure his parents, even though they're all Americanized, Chinese Americans. I don't know that his parents would have heavily weighed in on that either. It's a very Caucasian thing, Kyle. The whole argument between Taylor Ham and Porkle is an indescribably white problem.
It's well, I guess that's just the Ocean County. It's primarily Caucasian, so yeah, that's pretty much the big debate. Again, thank you very much for
My
coming
pleasure,
on,
thanks a
and
lot.
I'm excited to see again both the books that are coming, Suburban Dicks in 2021. I'm excited to see that. Definitely check it out. It's coming. I guess when I post it, I will upload, get some of those links to promote it if they're out there. And of course, that unknown Marvel
if you
series.
look at my social media stuff, I tweeted and I posted on Facebook, and it had URL links to the Publishers Weekly article.
Oh, I was totally gonna forget that. You want to drop the socials and your website, any websites they want to throw out there?
I'm on Facebook and at Fabian Nicieza on Twitter, and my whole name on Twitter. And that's really it. I don't do much on Instagram.
All right, awesome. And again, excited to get that second part. I'm excited to see what the Marvel miniseries is along with that. So yeah, I'm excited to check out your work, and I hope everybody checks them out too. And again, thank you very much for listening to this episode, everyone. This has been the second episode of We're Young But Just Us. And again, thank you, Mr. Nicieza, for coming on.
Thank you very much, Kyle. I appreciate it. It's a really good show. Well done.
All right. Thank you, man. And have a great night, everyone.
You too. Thanks a lot.
So that was Fabian Nicieza with a great conversation. I was very happy to have him come on. We covered some great ground, and just a fun guy to talk to. And I'm excited for all of his future projects. Of course, we'll put some links to those when we upload this to our Twitter account. And of course, follow that at Sports Opinions Podcast. And this podcast, We're Young But Just Us, will be on all the streaming services: Spotify, Apple Music, Spreaker, YouTube, maybe even MySpace, if you still do MySpace. But then again, thank you for listening. Hope you enjoyed the episode. And please stay tuned. We have some more great guests coming up in the future. Talk some comics, sports, maybe other shenanigans. Because who doesn't love comics, sports, and shenanigans? I know I can't get enough. So please stay tuned for the future. And thank you for listening. Bye.